going down? It's your boy Juicy J. My hustle is our hustle, man. That's what you're watching right now. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Hip Hop Report. This is Rambo Hustle, and today we'll be discussing YG's The Gentleman Club. Now, YG's The Gentleman Club is a brand new album from West Coast artist, gangster rapper from Bompton, California, if you want to be grammatically correct, YG. Now, YG traditionally has always been a gangster street cat, and he made music that reflected that unapologetically. Now, in a recent interview, YG said that he had a conversation with Kendrick Lamar, where he told Kendrick that, hey, I've just been making albums to get out of my deal. To which Kendrick replied, and he gave him the advice to say, look, man, never do that. Because when you do that, you're sacrificing your brand, your sound, and your catalog just to get out of a deal that should be the way that you build the foundation for your future. And with that being said, it looks like the advice worked. You know, for people that say that Kendrick doesn't inspire, that he doesn't motivate, that he doesn't do anything for anybody outside of him, now you have a artist that in reality could have just milked the gangster rap lane for his entire career, challenging himself and taking risks that honestly he didn't really have to do. And even though some of the risks don't necessarily land, and some of the challenges that he presents to himself to try to elevate his sound, his content, and what his music sounds like in general aren't always perfect, you do have to show some love and give him flowers for taking it upon himself to push himself to go to the next level on his sound. Now, as far as the project goes, it starts off with a skit that lets you know that we are into a more of a conceptual album we've never really gotten from YG because, like he said, he's been doing music to get out of his deal. So with the intro, we already get an idea of what this gentleman's club is. Now, we don't know what it is, but we have an idea that he's trying to elevate. He's trying to challenge himself to become a better man. And in the midst of that, there's going to be challenges and sacrifices that he has to make. And even though he may not be sure how he's going to handle those things, he's going full force ahead. Now, in OMG, it's one of those first instances where, honestly, a few years back when they first came out, not tooted and booted YG, but maybe like after that, you would have never pictured him doing a record with Pusha T because obviously YG and Pusha T lyrically are not two artists that are in the same playing field. Now, maybe this is because of the Kendrick connection and the love for him, and obviously the evolution of wanting to power up and collaborate with other artists, but we actually do get a pretty good record, and I think the verses are by far the strongest parts of this record. Even though the OMG repetitive hook really doesn't land on me, I thought that was kind of a weak way to start the album, honestly. Like, the first musical presentation is this. But at the same time, I do understand that, you know, with Pusha doing what he does and YG showcasing that, hey, this is not the old YG. I'm going to be elevating my bars, elevating my raps, and showcasing my new passion for what I wanted my sound to be, what I want to be recognized for doing in my music. But so for that, OMG kind of misses for me, but I do love the record. I just didn't feel like the hook specifically was strong enough to really put it in my keeper list. Now, Kudos, on the other hand, which really reminded me, even sonically, the instrumental and the presentation, and even the concept of what he's talking about and the direction of it, it seems like very much Guilty Conscious by Eminem and Dr. Dre, where he is self-reflecting, and you know what I figured was happening is exactly what was happening, which was YG was talking to himself about himself and giving him his flowers, but also saying, like, we've done that and now it's time to move forward, which I do feel like is what Kudos is representative. So with that being said, Kudos is my first keeper for the Hip Hop Report playlist, followed by Hitman. Now, Hitman on its own, maybe not the strongest record, but I think within the concept of the album, it is a must. And you have to have this record because there's a storyline with it, this album that requires you to listen to Hitman and to realize that the hit he's putting out isn't the average hit. But that being said, and that was Double Entendre if you didn't catch it, this is, like I said, a foundation for what YG is presenting to us in the Gentleman's Club. Now, with Simon Says, we also get Isaiah Falls, which is one of my favorite new artists. He's got a record called Florida Baby that I think is like absolute fire. And it's been one of my favorite records for the last 2-3 years, as well as Sasha Keeble. And this one is probably one of the softest moments of this album, but also shows a little bit of diversity and allows us to kind of see a different side of what the album is. And with Simon Says, again, it plays into that same Gentleman's Club concept where YG is trying to find a way to become a different, a better, a softer man, let's call it, without losing who he is and who his brand is and what his sound is about. And of course, his experience growing up in California. Now with that, we have On the Low, which I think is a really cool collaboration. I don't know if, we saw Tyler, the Creator, jump on TV Off, I think it was. Or maybe it was Pico. I can't remember which record he did, but he flipped the record during the GNX campaign. So we know he's got this flow in his bag. And even though his image and his persona isn't necessarily reflective of what this sound is, you still appreciate him jumping on this particular record. Now, personally, I've found myself growing into this record a lot more. And I think basically straight off just star power, I should probably add it to my list. But I'm going to leave it off because, honestly, I feel like everyone's going to put it on the list. So for that, you guys can go listen to that on your own. I'm going to keep it off because I'd really like to keep my light on YG and what he's doing as far as his evolution as an artist. Now, with that, We Know the Truth, which also plays into the concept, followed by Hollywood, which is featuring Shoreline Mafia. Now, of course, Shoreline Mafia is Phoenix Flexing as well as OGZ. If you only know Phoenix Flexing from his current single Rubbers, you would be surprised that this is the same guy, which is why everyone thinks that the record is AI. But honestly, if you've made music, if you have any creative spirit in your body, you know that your voice is an instrument. You can change your voice, you can tweak it, you can make all kinds of voice. That's why, you see some people like Eric Spears that can imitate Jay-Z and DMX and all these other people just because of his voice. And if you have a good ear, you can imitate and tweak your voice in many different ways. So for me, Rubbers is just as more Shoreline Mafia as anything else. But this Shoreline Mafia is straight gangster shit. And Hollywood is definitely one of my favorite records, so that's going on the playlist because if I put that in the car, I'm going at least 30 miles over the speed limit in residential, hands down. Now with that, we have the first single that came out, which is called Gang Business, which is, to me, a great reflection of what the Pop Out provided us, was the ability for California artists to have a leader that said, look, you don't have to fight each other. You can collaborate with each other, and we can change the whole culture of what the streets and gangs represent. Now, does that mean that there's no more gang violence in California? No. Does that mean the gangs are at peace and they don't go to war if shit goes down? No. But of course, if you're from Canada and you've never been in this lifestyle, then you would think that that's what this Pop Out required the result to be. But that's just ignorant because you have no culture. Anyways, I digress. With that being said, we have Ready to Die, which, like I said, is a follow-up to The Hitman. It's the Hitman response. This record, even though the hook and the chorus is very repetitive, like OMG was, I do think the Ready to Die concept, the reference back to Biggie, the homage to New York, and just YG being able to carry this record really shine through. And I think he delivers a great chorus that actually elevates the record, and it doesn't seem flat. It doesn't seem incomplete. So that, again, one of my keepers on the project as well. Now we have Right My Wrongs with OG, as well as Dinner Dates and Heartbreaks, which is another one of my keepers. A record that really showcases YG's willingness to evolve his sound and to mature into a new flow, and to allow his listeners to grow with him instead of milking what he's already been doing and known to do because it's been selling. Now, again, this is a point where we have to respect the artist and the art enough to give ourselves grace, to listen to this album openly, and just accept that this artist is evolving. And hey, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But if you are a supporter of the artist and you like good music, I think you'll find yourself enjoying this album quite a bit. Now, after that, we have Tiffany, which honestly, if you haven't seen the viral videos of people reacting to this, it's a crazy story about this guy dating this girl and finding out that she's trans. And honestly, as I'm listening to it, the first half, is hard. It's hard to listen to because the story in itself is just, it's shocking, but also it's like, it's just sonically kind of like against the grain. It's hard to listen to. However, when the beat switches and you get the second half of the record, I think that part of the record is fire. I don't even think I've consumed lyrically where that goes in regards of Tiffany, but as far as the second half of Tiffany, that's a keeper for me. I wish I could kind of split that out and I would put this on my keeper list, but because you have to go through that first stage of it, it does not make it. Now, Insecure at number 14 on paper has tons of star power with JID and Absol. If you're a fan of JID or Absol, obviously you're going to go listen to this record to hear bars, to hear lyrical ability and flex. But I don't know if that record really shines through as one of those records that that you're going to be playing on repeat a lot, you know, outside of if you enjoy those bars. So for my lyrical fans and the people that really appreciate bars, obviously you got to put that on your playlist because they go crazy. But for the people, at least for me, you know, when I pick these records, I'm leaning more into records that are just universally enjoyable because not everyone is a fan of lyrics on a heavy scale and not everyone is a fan of gangster rap. I understand that. And personally, I understand that not everyone is a fan of West Coast music, which is my theory, which here comes the tangent of the day, which is West Coast music has always allowed non-West Coast artists to shine. What do I mean by that? You gotta think about it. Bone Thugs, Eminem, Dr. Dre, all these artists shined on West Coast production. Why? Because generally, as a listener, most fans from across the country, if you're from the West Coast and you're on West Coast production, it's just too West Coast. And even though I love West Coast music, and I came up in West Coast music, I produce West Coast music, I got a couple West Coast sounding records, I'm at least aware enough to understand that too West Coast is not listenable to most people across the country because that's just not, it's just so, it's just such a regional sound that you really have to love hip hop at its core. That's why a lot of the West Coast artists that are universally successful, OGs, Too Short, E40, these artists were huge in their prime 15, 20 years ago. And they're still huge because those records are like that. But nowadays, I think a lot of West Coast artists, specifically after the DJ Mustard run, they, you know, which to me, honestly, it was West Coast, but it became so commercial that it became the sound. And so even though that was a super commercial sound that took over the industry, you think Show Me with Chris Brown and Kid Ink, Tyga, I mean, so many records that were either made by Mustard or emulated by Mustard. If you really put Mustard on the verses, you're talking about some major records and tons of just classic sounds. You know, but of course that became so popular that people didn't realize that the sound that they were loving at that moment was the West Coast sound. I even got a record called Bad with my guy Any Means and K Young, which has that exact same sound. So again, you know, a lot of people like to talk down on the West Coast sound, not realizing that the West Coast has ran hip hop for a few different seasons. So, you know, definitely don't downplay the West Coast. And I think, personally, I think that's what made Kendrick so special. Kendrick could do New York music, which honestly, if you look at the No Sleep Till NYC, which was a TDE project, I did the album cover with my girl, Induce Graphics, which is actually where this design comes from, the skyline. The only difference was they didn't want the East Coast, which I thought was weird because the project was No Sleep Till NYC. Oh, no, my bad. That was the Do It Squad. But yeah, so, you know, like, this is from the Do It Squad mixtape, and then No Sleep to NYC. I think Miami Chaos did that cover. But, you know, during that time, that was one of the things that Kendrick was doing when he was still K-Dot. He was showcasing his ability as a West Coast artist to rap on East Coast beats because he understood the importance of showing love to the East Coast sound, but also showcasing his lyrical ability on a sound that the rest of the world could latch onto and to go, ooh, that this is fire. And if you guys go back and listen to those mixtapes, J-Rock's on there, Dot is on there, you know, you start to understand why Kendrick had the rise that he did. And it sure wasn't no Paradise tour. Now with that, we have Midlife Crisis, you know, and I think Midlife Crisis is a great ending to the project. It even loops back into the first record beautifully. And to be honest with you, Buddy's on that record also. But like, if YG's midlife crisis is that he has to kill his ego off to become a better man, to evolve into the next stage of who he is going to be as an artist and his sound, then, you know, I'm all for it. You know, even though we're always going to get gangster shit from YG, we're always going to get street talk from YG, but it's great to see him in a suit. I love the concept of the Gentleman's Club, and I think it's a beautiful moment for West Coast music to not just collaborate, but also to showcase that there is an evolution happening on the West Coast where artists don't have to be hard over bacon, or as Cat Williams would say, hard over breakfast. So with that being said, make sure you go check out YG's The Gentleman Club. This is Rambo Hustle with the Hip Hop Report. Once again, make sure you check out the Hip Hop Report playlist with our selections. Kudos, Hollywood, Gang Business, Ready to Die, Dinner Dates and Heartbreaks, as well as the second half of Tiffany. But remember, the second half. Don't kill me for that. Peace.